The first question is, how many of you know what oxytocin is? And my daughter doesn't count. She's heard my lectures. Oxytocin is what we call the love drug. Oxytocin is the drug that is secreted by the brain and body when mothers are breastfeeding, when we hug our spouse deeply for more than 20 seconds and we just kind of feel that relaxation. That's an oxytocin feed. It's a bonding chemical. The interesting thing about oxytocin is that when we are in connection with each other, we have large levels of it, right? It was necessary for our survival in some ways. The first 6 months of a child's life, they're mostly just a screaming poo bag, right? But we look at them and we get this oxytocin feed, and so we decide we'll keep them around instead of leaving them in the woods somewhere. I'm still not sure I made the right decision. But that's oxytocin. It's a connection thing. The interesting thing is that our brain also lights up in the same regions, and we get that same oxytocin flood when we're in deep prayer or meditation, when we're calling out to our Creator. We were built, quite literally, for connection. That's what we were made for. One of the things that can interfere with that connection is fear. When we're afraid, it triggers this part of our brain. And when this part of our brain triggers, it shuts off all of the part of our brain that's capable of rational thinking, of connection. And so what does God start with more than anything else in the Bible when he sends a messenger to us? Fear not. Fear not. He created us. He knows that if we're afraid, we can't have a relationship with him. It interferes. And usually, if you think about it, when we're afraid, we make our dumbest decisions out of that space. Right? Both sides of the political fence know this because they're constantly sending you emails or showing on their news cycles that your life is about to end if you don't vote this way. Right? Or telling you about things that happened in Chicago as if they had happened in your backyard. If they bleed, they lead. Why? Because if I triggered this part of your brain, you're not thinking rationally anymore. And now I can sell you on the idea that that new Lexus SUV will change your life. Right? So why am I starting off by talking about fear and connection and the brain when the sermon is supposed to be about pain? The promise of pain. In a perfect world, we have no need for help. We don't cry out for connection. Do you think it was any mistake that God said to Adam and Eve, don't go bite from that apple? He's dealing with children. I would never tell my kids, don't go get in that jar over there, it's got cookies in it. So why would an omniscient and omnipotent God tell two people not to go bite from a tree, knowing ahead of time that's exactly what they were going to do? Because pain, the pain of biting from that apple, the pain of our mistakes, creates an opportunity for connection. It creates need. In a perfect world, if you continued to walk in the garden with God and everything were perfect and nothing were ever wrong, you really wouldn't need that connection, would you? You wouldn't reach out. It's in times of pain that we reach out for connection. Pain is the result, and pain drove the first couple into longing, into need, and into reaching out for connection. Do your kids overreach ever? Especially those of you with adult kids, do they ever overreach? Anybody? Got kids that try for too much and you can't stop them? What do? Tell them they're getting a little big for their britches? That doesn't work. When they do, and they fall, where's their first phone call usually? It's to home, to their connection. The pain drives them back to connection. How many of you let your kids overreach, but you know the phone call's coming? All the time, right? This is why Psalm 42 is my favorite psalm. I looked up there because I thought it was still up there, but he's crying out. David has been cast down because he messed up. He messed up. He did a terrible thing. He had an affair with his general's wife, and then he put his general out front to be murdered so he could take the wife and the resultant child. Not okay. It separated him from God. In the story it talks about the prophet coming and telling him that this was going to happen. He was going to lose his throne because he'd done what he knew he'd done. But he was separated from God the minute he did it. And that's where the pain came from. And then he spends all that time in the woods. And he cries out finally, as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When can I go and meet with my God? He wants to go again to the temple and sacrifice. And God's answer was essentially, I don't want your sacrifice. I want your broken heart. That's what he's looking for. He breaks us so that he can rebuild us. He breaks us, I'll say that again, so that he can rebuild us in a better way. Now, I will say that some of you know, some of you don't, that our son died a year and a half ago. At 22 years old, he died of an overdose. I don't think God did that just to rebuild me. But the promise of that pain is that if I will sit with it and not numb it out and not run away from it, he will rebuild me. He will find a use for that. That's why we built the nonprofit. He will find a use for that. He will drive us. But we have to be able to hang on through the pain and the fear, because we're not willing to hear if we don't experience those things. In Ezekiel 36, 26 to 28, I'll give you guys a second if you want to look it up. Ezekiel 36, 26 to 28. God says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. That sounds like a God that desires connection to me. I'm getting rid of your heart of stone, and I'm going to give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Don't stray. When you stray, we get separated. Right? Follow my laws, not because I say so, but because I want connection with you, and this is your instructional sheet on how we stay connected. Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. And I'm not trying to improve on the Bible when I say I would add, and we will stay in connection. Pain is the answer, the reformer, the thing that creates both desire for connection and the promise of better days once we immerse ourselves in that connection, once we allow it. It is not easy. How do I go on after something like that kind of pain? How do I go forward? I can tell you for 2 months I didn't know how I was going to go forward, other than just, I think I'll lay in bed and hide. Any of you ever feel that way? Yeah, all the time. Things got hard financially. Things got hard this way. Things got hard, I think I'll just stay here and hide under the covers. He loves me enough not to let me do that. Generally, although I don't attribute to this to God, the rent comes due, and I have to get out of bed. And if I want to find the strength to do that and move forward, I have to move back into connection. C.S. Lewis said, we can ignore even pleasure. In fact, the brain is designed in a way that we don't pay much attention to the good things that happen because they can't kill us. What we pay attention to is the scary things, and this is why the divisiveness of today has gotten so fearful and so fierce. If you believe what they believe, then you are going to die. Well, we're all going to die. The only question is, how much am I letting fear control me? To go on with C.S. Lewis, he says, but pain insists upon being attended to. Pain drives need. Need drives me reaching out for connection. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but he shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. No doubt pain, as God's megaphone, is a terrible instrument. It is not fun. It may lead to final and unrepented rebellion, but it gives the only opportunity, and C.S. Lewis says the bad man, I would say the lost man, the lost woman. I don't believe any of us are truly bad. We can choose that path, but that's not who we are. He goes on to say that the bad man can have for amendment. It removes the veil. It plants the flag of truth within the fortress of the rebel soul. It creates longing. Any of you ever heard of the poet Rumi? He was a 12th century Persian mystic, and he's one of my favorite poets. He wrote once, and it's the poem called Love Dogs, and I'm going to butcher it if I try to tell it to you by memory, so I'm just going to tell you what it's about. It's about a very devout man who every day is praying to God. Every day. And suddenly he stops, and a prophet walks by and says, every day I see you praying to God, and yet for weeks I have not seen you praying. What's going on? And the man says, every day I pray to God, and the only thing I feel, the only answer I get is an increased longing. And so I gave up. And the prophet said, you're a fool. He said, like a dog that whines for his master, that longing is your connection. He said, there are love dogs in the world no one knows the names of. Give your life to be one of them. It is the longing that pain creates that moves us toward connection. And that is true whether it's connection with those people around us that we love or connection with God. We are most there for each other and most connected in moments of pain. Fear causes divisiveness. If we are willing to sit with pain, though, we find connection. We are quite literally kintsugi pottery. Any of you know what kintsugi pottery is? Again, my daughter doesn't count. She knows all my lectures. Kintsugi pottery is a Japanese form of pottery where they make a pot that is absolutely beautiful and perfect, and then they take a hammer and they break it into pieces. Why do they do that? Because they fundamentally understand, and I have a big sign that I made in my office with this, and all of my patients see it when they come in, that our beauty is birthed in our brokenness. Because when we are broken, God has the opportunity to heal us, seal us back up with gold seams, and make something more beautiful than we ever thought we could be. That's kintsugi pottery. Our brokenness is where we reach out for connection, and he is able to improve on our lives and our souls, more importantly. I liked what Pastor Laura said last time. I don't pray to God for a parking place. I couldn't have said it better, and I've said it a million times. God is not my parking attendant. He's the one I reach out to when I'm in need and frustrated and angry simply because I can't find a parking place, and tells me it's okay. Parking places aren't that important, and I need to lose a little anyway, so maybe I need to think about walking from the back of Walmart, right? Pain is a course correction. It's God saying to us, hey, I'm over here, and I still love you.